Hello, everyone, and welcome to a fall edition of the Filmocracy Podcast. Once again, joined by John Fitzgerald, CEO of iGEMS, and co-host of this podcast. Wow, it felt like every episode was a summer episode, and now it's suddenly fall, and it's roaring into the season. How are
Yeah,
you doing?
these are exciting times. I mean, for us cinephiles, right? Fall festival season is when things really kick into high gear, not
It,
just in terms of quality of movies, but I know with Filmocracy, tons of action.
it does really feel like this is the first, kind of normal-ish year
Mhm.
since the pandemic. Like everybody's kind of going back to the way they used to do business. And even though some are doing hybrid stuff, it's definitely an in-person thing that's happening, movement that's happening now. And everybody's excited. There's a lot of people. There's not a lot of masks, but that's okay. So yeah, maybe John, you can catch us up on the fall circuit.
Yeah, well, I think to your point, Paul. I mean, you and I were in Toronto last year, and we were greeted at the door and reminded to put our masks on, right? Every time we came to the hotel, and I think it is a different time. Well, we still have half an eye on what's happening with COVID. I think, for these big fall festivals, it's interesting because they're all entirely in person. We kicked everything off a few weeks ago in Venice, some strong titles there, and then moved into Telluride over Labor Day weekend, and then of course Toronto kicked off, and all of these festivals are only in person, and I find that interesting, and maybe we'll kind of dust that off a little bit later. But Sundance has announced that they're coming back with a hybrid next year, and a lot of other festivals are doing a hybrid. But these big fall festivals want to be in person, and I can understand Venice, right? Because they're kind of the oldest and the snobs, and it's their thing and cinephiles. But for somebody like Toronto, I kind of was a little surprised, I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real reason all of these festivals are coming back in person is because people love giving standing ovations. You know, we there's so much news. I don't know if it's because people have not been in the theater together in a huge group in a while, but Brendan Fraser's movie The Whale got a 6-minute standing ovation in Venice, and then Bones and All got a 9-minute standing ovation in Vegas, and then Anna de Armas's movie got a 14-minute standing
Wow.
ovation.
Right, and I think Brendan Fraser got an award, an acting award, right, from one of the fests.
I
I
think
feel
Venice.
like was it Venice? Yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a knockout performance.
Yeah, it's oh, and one more, Banshees of Inisherin got a 13-minute standing ovation in Vegas. This is a long time. For those of you listening who haven't been in a standing ovation, that's a really long time to clap. And the whole time, at least for me, I'm just like, all right, I can't leave. You can't leave. You can't leave during a standing ovation. It's just like that would be so
You gotta
rude.
wait it out. You gotta wait it out. Well, let's unpack a few of these films real quick, and then I think we should talk a little bit about Toronto because it's still going, and there's a lot of interesting double-edged swords fighting each other there. But I think it goes without saying that the fall season is the most important festival season, and for a lot of reasons, it kind of comes down to awards. Sadly, a lot of the studios are pushing their prestige pictures, gunning for Oscars, and I thought it was interesting today. Eric Cohn at Indiewire wrote a great piece about how you know the studios are kind of in a way trying to reclaim their position. Last year, of course, Coda acquired out of Sundance for what, 25 million dollars or whatever it was. It kind of sneaks away with the best picture. And and this year you've got a lot of big buzz titles with big celebrities, big studio movies,
Babylon.
trying to, yeah. Did you hear they showed a trailer for that at Toronto? And
How was the response?
like through the roof, right? It's Margot Robbie and Brad Pitt. But what the crazy thing is, it wasn't even the movie. It was the trailer.
And there was a 10-minute standing ovation for the trailer.
Right, right. Right, but yeah, so they're sneaking that out a bit, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong here, Paul, but I feel like Spielberg's first time in Toronto was this year, and they showed The Fabelmans, which everybody's raving about. So
Mhm.
an absolute lock for Best Picture nomination, and an autobiographical look at his parents' divorce and kind of his early rumblings about being a filmmaker. I'm sure the kid's got a camera in his hand. I mean, I haven't seen it. I didn't go to Toronto this year, but it sounds and looks amazing.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute since he's really been that active, I think, in that sense. He's done some like executive producing, but producing is a little bit different, right? So it's interesting for him to make a comeback, and it seems like looking at his like upcoming stuff, he's got actually a lot happening. He seems to be like reactivated to start doing work again.
Yeah, and he heard he did the Mumford video, right? He literally with an iPhone directed the music video
Oh yeah.
for the title track. I think it was maybe it's not the title track, but it's the opening song, I think, on Mumford's solo album, which he talks about abuse. I guess it's a pretty intense album. But yeah, so Spielberg directed it with an iPhone. But yeah, and then so what else? So the Blonde movie, the Marilyn Monroe biopic, premiered at Venice. That was certainly generating some buzz. And then there's of course the Cannibal movie with Chalamet. Did you hear about that one?
I did. It's actually been received pretty well despite the subject matter.
What's it called? Bones and All.
Yeah. I think that's the one that got a standing ovation for like 10 minutes or something. 9 minutes.
Yeah, it's supposed to be pretty intense. I mean, very cinematic, but at the end of the day, I think the quotes are, "It was so insane and fucked up, but in the best possible way." But yeah, cannibals
Yeah. Who
in the
knew?
mainstream.
They're on a comeback.
So let's unpack what's happening in Toronto, because it seems like I think we talked about this before. I've always said, even since I was at AFI a gazillion years ago, when I got to go to Toronto, I felt like that was the best festival all around. They really took care of the industry, unlike Cannes and Berlin, where you got to wait in line for tickets for the next day's events. I mean, you got your pass in Toronto, and you got to see anything you wanted to see. You showed up at your industry screening, and there's always a seat for you, and great parties. You met everybody, and then of course they took care of the local community, galas galore, the red carpet and the whole 9 yards, people taking their work vacations during the festival to be out and about and see great films. But I feel like there's been a strange turn where I wonder, Paul, if they're trying to do too much.
Yeah. I mean, they do everything, right? And they're probably one of the best integrated like industry and normal population festivals out there, where it doesn't feel exclusive. Like a lot of people will plan around it just because you get such access that you wouldn't normally get as a regular fan. But I think, yeah, that just comes with a whole host of responsibilities, but also criticisms. And they're a little bit under the microscope in a sense too, just because it draws so much attention. And kind of the society we live in today is kind of like that, right? Like everybody's kind of nitpicking and trying to find what could be better, which is in some ways good, but it's also like it's good to hold organizations and events to a higher standard, but it's also an almost impossible task, it feels like. There's a couple pieces of news that came out of Toronto. The first one is there's a movie called The People's Joker, which is a queer movie set. It's a parody in the Batman universe. And so parodies shouldn't be controlled under like copyright because they're parodies, but apparently it was forced to not participate because of Warner Media, since they have the rights to the DC universe. So they're obviously very upset. And I've heard some pretty great things about this film, and it should be considered fair use, but at the end of the day, it's a commercial enterprise, and if Warner Media says we're not going to work with you, Toronto, if you show this film, then what's really Toronto supposed to do?
Yeah.
I mean, I know what I would do if I were Toronto. I'd be like, well, Warner Media is going down, going down the hole, so maybe it's not even worth dealing with you and your demands anymore. Who knows?
Yeah, the politics at that level gets pretty intense. I mean, not to shift gears to Sundance, but I mean, for many years they had to deal with their own dramas, right? Because they're showing a lot of movies that Sony Classics and Miramax and Fox Searchlight and a lot of these mini majors had already acquired, and they were kind of leveraging their relationships to have a lot of these movies take up slots at Sundance, and they went through a number of years where people were saying it was just too political, and they were showing a lot of alumni films, and I don't know. That's a whole other podcast, I guess. But I think back to Toronto, it sounds like you said something about Hillary being flown in and a lot of double standards there. So I thought there was some interesting play there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, had a lot of things happen under her 8 years where she went after Julian Assange, and there's a lot of prosecution and extraditions happening, and it begs the question of like, what does TIFF stand for then? Because TIFF also has a documentary from another journalist who is Iranian. His name is Jafar Pahani, and his film No Bears is in the festival. So it's kind of like a person who typically goes after people like this filmmaker, or actually in her career went after those people.
Right. Her former life.
And they're in the same festival. And I don't know if that, I mean, I guess you could argue that it's good to have like both sides of something, but also like with the Taylor Swift thing, having her short and flying out there, like, I guess is TIFF becoming too commercial for its own good?
Yeah,
or,
it's about the press.
Or is that like a method of like, you have to cater a little bit to celebrity, and that will allow other people to discover films like No Bears from Jafar Pahani that maybe they wouldn't normally hear about if it were a smaller festival? Like, there's always like two sides of this, right? Like, and I think it's almost like the startup thing. It's like, would you rather have a small piece of a huge pie? In this case, it would be TIFF is the pie, and you can be a slice of it, but the pie can only be so big if you have Hillary Clinton and Taylor Swift coming. Or should you just
Steven Spielberg?
Yeah, or should you be a smaller festival that's like more about representation, and then maybe you're not as popular, and then you're not TIFF anymore?
Yeah, it is an interesting question. I think the truth is it has become the biggest film festival in North America. I mean, some would argue Sundance is in some ways more important for American indies, maybe, but in terms of just the sheer scope and import and budget and cost, I mean, studios spend tons of money to essentially make these festival screenings in Toronto their fall press junket. It really helps to kick off whatever movie it is they're kicking off. And so it has become big business in a way. And yeah, it goes with the territory. But, when you read articles about Taylor Swift, who has certainly done her thing in music and done it very well, kind of jumping into the film landscape and people saying she's gunning for an Oscar for her short film.
So talented. So
Where does it
deserving.
end? Where does it end? Well, anything else on Toronto, or should we shift gears to other items in the news?
I think we should shift gears, but I do want to make the Batman quote relevant again, which is you either die the hero or live long enough to become the villain. And I remember when I first heard that quote in the movie, I was like, this is a dumb quote. It's like just trying to talk about Batman becoming the villain. But if you think about it, it kind of fits that idea of like the longer you exist, you kind of only exist because you do the things that you make you the villain. Like you have to be the villain to survive that long and have that much success. And this is a whole nother topic that I could talk about, like capitalism and startups and how every large corporation is evil and why. But we'll move past that.
We'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah, the capitalism episode.
Awesome. Well, I just thought there are a few interesting ideas and sad things that are taking place in the news. But let's start on a high note. I think it's a great thing for Sundance that they got Eugene Hernandez to step in, and I think he's going to jump into the role as director, and he'll oversee programming and all that, I think in 2024. But the fact that they were able to bring him in, everybody's saying, and I agree, that it's a cool thing, and it in some ways comes full circle because he's been such a mainstay in Park City for so many years. I mean, when he was first starting Indiewire, he was there all the time, and I remember seeing him and talking to him about everything that was happening. He was always at South by Southwest. He was an integral part of kind of this evolving independent film landscape. And then, of course, he went to Lincoln Center, where he ran the New York Film Festival and publisher of Film Comment. So he's had a huge impact on the space. So kudos for Sundance for bringing him in. And I just kind of wanted to give a shout out there.
Do we know what happened to Tabitha?
We don't. It's a little bit sad, I think, because obviously she came in at a really difficult time.
Yeah.
Having to inherit the reins during COVID. It definitely wasn't an easy go. I didn't hear anything specific from one person, but I did hear enough rumblings that it was kind of a mutual thing. Like I don't think it was going so well, and I think she has other things she wants to do, and if it wasn't rosy and it wasn't going to be what she thought it was going to be, it was kind of a mutual parting is what I heard, but I didn't hear any dirt.
Yeah, probably something along the lines of you have hopes and dreams of how you're going to make your stamp on an organization and event, and then COVID wrench prevents you from doing anything, and then the politics of everything keep you from doing everything. So I'm not surprised. It's a tough job, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. That job, and a lot coming at you that you didn't anticipate, and certainly a lot of politics, and
Yeah.
a lot of finger pointing if everything doesn't go the right way. So, anyway, so the other thing in the news that we certainly can't ignore is the passing of Godard and his impact on the film world. And I mean, he passed away at 91 yesterday. I feel like I read it was assisted suicide, but certainly lived a long, fruitful life. And when I took my first history of film course in Santa Barbara, I remember watching Breathless and thinking, wow, this is pretty cool. And then having to, of course, learn the history of, Cahiers du Cinema and the auteur theory and the French New Wave. I mean, it just all came crashing down on me as a film student. So I could see his impact, and it's it's going to be interesting the next few weeks to see all the tributes and, the top lists and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at older films and it was such a trailblazing world for like the first like 60, 70 years. Like you were still able to do stuff that nobody else had done. But if you look at it in the context of like historically, they didn't have all of the tools and knowledge that we have so easily accessible today. And so the things that they did back then are like incredible. Like how to come up with that. And Jean Luc Godard obviously was very influential on many of the filmmakers today, like just eschewing tradition and coming up with his own style that was more realistic. And I remember I was watching this YouTube video of these stunt coordinators, and they're like watching older films and judging the stunts on them, and like basically shitting on like all the new shaky cam stuff. Right. And then they showed this Charlie Chaplin scene where, is it Charlie Chaplin? I think it is, where he's on a train. The train's not moving that fast, but he's like, it's a real train, and he's standing on the front of it, and then there's like a wood plank in front of the train that he has to use his own wood plank to hit that plank out of the way.
Right.
And you just think about it, like when you watch it today, you're like, oh, that's silly. Like that's so easy. But like at the time, that was like so dangerous, right? He has no
a lot of those guys did their own stunts. Yeah.
I think maybe it was Buster Keaton.
It might have been Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
Did a lot of his own stunts.
Yeah.
Harold Lloyd.
So kind of like that, like all of these older films, and many of them still hold up, obviously, but some of them where you're kind of like, oh, I've seen this before, this is familiar, but it's because they were the one who like made that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, it's been a long time since I've seen Breathless, but I do remember the black and white cinematography, and it was the first time I'd experienced jump cuts, where you'd like be watching somebody move and then them just cut forward, and not to a different scene, like the same scene, but it was jarring in a way, but interesting, and his use of pop culture and music and just, in a way playful. I mean, obviously a rebellious sense of humor, but it was fun. The other movie that I really liked was Vivre sa vie, My Life to Live. This was a film shot in 12 scenes, where Anna Karina, who he was married to for a short time, plays this young woman, and she's divorced recently and basically working in a record shop, and meets a prostitute, and ultimately decides, this is a way for her to make some money. And I don't want to give it away for those of you who haven't seen it, and you can see it on HBO Max right now. And a lot of Godard's films are available on Amazon and Criterion, obviously. But this was one of the stronger ones, I thought. And, a lot of social commentary, which is one of his trademarks. But yeah, really, really intense, really intense. Go ahead.
So all you listeners have some homework after listening to this episode. Out of respect for the master, go watch one Jean Luc Godard film and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, and report back. The last thing I thought maybe I would just bring up, because again, one of the things that we spent a lot of our time on is the whole film festival arena. And of course, the Emmys were this week, and I just find it interesting, Paul, that some of our clients are introducing TV series and episodic. Obviously, docuseries are exploding. I wondered what you thought of that, and do you think we're going to see more of that in film festivals in the coming years with the growth of television?
Definitely. I definitely am confused why that has not happened. But I think also like these award shows are losing a bit of their relevance. Like their viewership is down. and people don't really care that much about the actual show. Like the award itself is obviously prestigious and has impact, but like in terms of watching the actual show, I don't know, especially like younger people don't care
They don't
about
care.
watching. Like when the slap happened, that was a meme and like everybody was on it, but nobody saw that live. You know, it was
That's
like
right.
one person saw it live and then posted it and it exploded. So, you know, it also, I think, begs the question of like, I mean, this is kind of like a conspiracy now online of like people wondering if the way that winners are chosen now is more to cater to fan tastes so that they're happy about it, as opposed to like however the judges actually scored. Like maybe there's a weighting system that they're changing. Like for example, Lee Jung Jae, who is the main actor in Squid Game, like he's great in it. He won best male actor, I think. Um, I don't think he was the like. I think there was a lot of really great shows and a lot of great performances. I don't think he was number one, but obviously Squid Game was the most popular show of the year based on pure numbers. So it kind of makes sense that he won if that is the metric. So people are kind of suspicious on that, you know. And I guess
Yeah, and I have to say I don't know enough about the TV Academy. So I know the numbers of memberships in the different categories for the Academy, like for the motion pictures,
Mhm.
and that's a lot harder to rig. And it maybe it got more in the actors branch than some of the other branches, and there's some issues there. But with the TV Academy, I don't know. And you raise a really interesting point, which we're actually going to write about a bit this week, which is the balance between kind of commercial sensibilities and what's working versus critical response, right? The Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritics, et cetera. And then the Academy that is actually supposedly voting on these things, right? Because those things aren't always in line. And I think for a long time, the Academy of Motion Pictures and Arts and Sciences were trying to find a way to pay more attention to mainstream, even though it was the blockbusters weren't necessarily getting attention by the Academy. It was the prestige pictures that didn't necessarily have the box office. And so they were trying to figure out how to balance that. And also, to your point, raise the ratings, which they struggled to do year after year. And I think, as you just said, you know, the ratings continue. I think this was the lowest for the Emmys. And you'd think it'd be just the opposite, right? Because everybody was there this year, right? They weren't there last year.
Yeah.
So it's a little surprising that it was so low.
It is too, also because like obviously TV ratings across the board are down year after year, but it's the live events that usually still perform, you know, especially like sports. And I guess, yeah, I mean, when you're trying to figure out who's gonna win, like you want to be the first to know, don't you? But it also doesn't seem like people need to watch the show to get that. They're happy to get a Twitter update where they can see the winners like in one thread instead of having to like sit through the show, right? This is all probably social media's fault.
Yeah, or the streaming universe,
Mm-hmm.
or some twisted combination. Well, that's all I got for this week. Paul, you got anything else we should dive into?
Well, I think just a last note is that we've got a lot of amazing film festivals this fall for Filmocracy. And so joining our subscription is obviously the best time to do it would be the fall because there's so many festivals happening and so many great movies. But we also have our film market coming up, which is on October 6th and 7th in Topanga, California. So that'll be a hybrid event, first day in person, second day online. Our third edition of the film market, and it's basically you getting face-to-face time with executives, and that's really hard to come by. So, you know, definitely check it out. You can learn more at festival.filmocracy.com/film market.
Yeah, and speaking of awards and festivals. One of our festival partners, the Lumiere Music Hall, was kind enough to partner with us, right, on this kind of Oscar qualifying run for short films, which we're now nearly finished with our first week. And I know, Paul, you've got 2 more weeks coming up. So anybody in Los Angeles, check out the Lumiere Music Hall, and you can see the short programs that are hoping to be recognized.
Yep, I've seen them. They're mostly great. Mostly, but definitely head to the Lumiere, support your local cinema, and we will see you all next time on the Filmocracy Podcast. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Paul.